Now, Triple H appeared on Cody Rhodes' What Do You Want to Talk About podcast. And there was a lot of information that came out this week in a separate report from Post Wrestling showing text messages between Paul Levesque and Nick Khan, and even some with Vince McMahon going back to 2023 that really showed that there was tension there, where Vince was still trying to make his presence felt in the creative process, and Levesque was clearly not a fan of this. Also, a lot of deleted messages by Nick Khan. There's nothing suspicious about that at all. This is all part of that shareholder lawsuit against the company, because there are shareholders who believe that WWE, the fix was in when they chose to go with Endeavor for the sale of the company, and it wasn't a fair process. So there were text message exchanges, especially between Levesque and Nick Khan, that came out. There was a whole story about it this week. It was very interesting because one of the comments in there from Triple H to Nick Khan was, "If it wasn't for you, I would have been gone a long time ago." To me, that was the most interesting line out of everything. But the key to the entire thing is that, again, Vince was trying to work his way back into the creative process, towards the end of 2023. And I don't know how Nick Khan honestly felt about it, but clearly, Levesque really did not want him around. And then, what was it, a month later, the beginning of 2024, is when the Janelle Grant lawsuit dropped, and that was the beginning of the end for Vince McMahon. That's really what we learned from that. Anyway, he was on the podcast with Cody Rhodes, which I imagine was, recorded several weeks ago. And he talked about how he considers WrestleMania 40, Triple H does, to be his first full WrestleMania as the chief content officer. But he did talk about Vince McMahon still directing traffic before that. He said, "It's not like one day here it's yours and everything else went away. There were so many aspects of, hey, Vince is stepping away, you're going to take his spot. But he's chiming in and he's still meeting with me all the time and he's still directing traffic from the side. And there's no real clear moment for me. But I would consider WrestleMania 40 to be that, yes. The only thing that is difficult in that transition, you're trying to, at the end of the day, when people are like, but it's your direction, right? It's your decision. Yeah, sort of. And you have to defend your position, and you have to be able to sell that to people and explain it to people if it's a little bit not in your position, or a little bit, well, why did this happen? And you don't want to say, well, because it wasn't totally my decision. And not because you don't want to seem like you don't have that power, but you have to position it that way. So there was a lot of talk this week about those comments and what he meant by that. And the reality is, this is what he is saying. By WrestleMania 40, Vince McMahon was no longer in the picture when it came to the creative process. We know he was still around when it came time for WrestleMania 39 because those reports came out. We know that he had an influence over the finish of the main event between Cody and Roman. He wanted Roman Reigns to win at WrestleMania 39. That was not just a Triple H idea, although Triple H did end up going along with it. I talked about the Demon earlier. He's going to be wrestling Dominic Mysterio at WrestleMania this weekend. He lost the last match we saw him in, which was Hell in a Cell with Edge. Originally, Balor was going to win that match. Supposedly, that was a Vince McMahon call, that Edge needed to win that match. And even Edge, I think, supposedly felt, differently about it, but that was a Vince call, right? Brock Lesnar and Omos, right? Do you think Triple H booked that match? Get the fuck out of here. Give me a break. Once Triple H really took over the reins, we didn't see Omos again on television. Only recently did he pop up in AAA. Omos is not a Triple H guy. He is a Vince McMahon guy through and through. So you could see his fingerprints all over it. That Raw after WrestleMania 39, which was fucking awful. One of the worst post-WrestleMania Raws that they have ever done. Supposedly that was a Vince call too, where he came in like the Tasmanian devil and, he ripped everything up and changed everything, and it was fucking terrible. So it was very clear that he still had influence at that point, even if he wasn't physically there, every single week. By the time we got to the beginning of 2024, when the Janelle Grant lawsuit dropped and Vince had to step away, that was it. That was the beginning of the end. And Triple H was, he was kind of in the trenches there when everything got blown up in preparation for WrestleMania 40, when they were going to do Rock and Roman, and the fans rebelled against it, so they had to pivot and go a different way with it, and The Rock agreed to go heel, and we got the final boss. And, Triple H doesn't deserve all the credit for that, but still, he was overseeing that creative process when all of that was going on heading into WrestleMania 40. And people look at that as one of the better WrestleMania buildups, frankly, that we have ever had once they decided to go in that direction. But there are still people who feel like, well, it was a Vince thing and, the bloodline stuff and everything else. Yes, that started under Vince. But this notion that and again, this is getting into the Vince stuff where there are people that are like, man, Triple H is terrible. Bring back Vince, as if Vince was responsible for all of these wonderful things that we had a few years ago. We were having all these different stories. This is the same Vince McMahon that was responsible for some of the worst fucking television that I have ever seen. If you want to go back 5, 6, 7 years. All of a sudden, what do you think happened here? He discovered the fountain of youth and he got his youthful exuberance back, and all of these great ideas that had fallen out of his brain had suddenly come back into his head in the last few years. I don't understand what people really think went on here. And this leads into what I was going to talk about here with Jim Ross. Jim Ross's podcast, Grilling JR. He was talking to Conrad Thompson. He talked about Triple H's recent comments that there was no real clear moment that he took over WWE creative, and that Vince McMahon was still an influence during the times that he was supposedly gone from WWE. JR said he believes that Vince will be instrumental in this year's WrestleMania. He said no matter what his other issues may or may not be, all of that stuff, it's still Vince. And I think anybody that's listening to this that have worked in WWE know full well that it's all about Vince, and it will remain that way until they bury him. He's an awesome influence. And how's it going to hurt for Vince to chip in with an idea or two and a general direction? He was always very good with that. He was always really good at picking out somebody that he wanted to get over and having a plan to make that happen. And I think that's kind of where we are right now. There's some massively marquee matches. And I think that he's in the kitchen and he's making pies, and we're going to see how his pies taste sooner than later. No, I don't want to taste his pies. Nobody wants to taste Vince McMahon's pies. You keep your pies to yourself. So then when he was asked if he feels that Vince is going to return to WWE in any creative capacity, he said, absolutely. No doubt about it. I don't even have a question in my mind. It's the old cliche where there's smoke, oftentimes there's fire. And there's been a lot of smoke regarding VKM and WWE and what his future may or may not be and how he can still contribute. He's a big picture guy, and that takes a lot of detail work and planning, but he can do that. He can make all of that happen. And he's hungry. Well, evidently, he's making pies. He says, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that Vince will still be instrumental or will be instrumental in this year's WrestleMania as far as creative is concerned. He's not going to wait on anything. As John Wayne would say, we're burning daylight. Something's going to happen, and I believe that McMahon will be able to contribute to this year's WrestleMania. There's a lot of smoke out there right now, and I think through the haze that Vince McMahon will rise again to some level. And this may be main events, this may be titles or whatever, I don't know, but I can't see this much talk and speculation about Vince for there not to be something there. It may not be as active as I perceive that he might be, but I don't know. I just think that he's going to be involved in WrestleMania in some shape, form, or fashion. And then he was asked if he felt that Ari Emanuel and Mark Shapiro would formally welcome Vince back, and he said absolutely. They would not be good businessmen if they weren't willing to entertain that idea, because they realize that McMahon's a guy that built the whole damn thing. He has a vision that nobody else has. The minute that it gets out that Vince McMahon is back, even if they try to keep it hush-hush, with the uproar online tagging all of their sponsors on social media, the entire thing would unravel. The entire thing would turn into a giant shitstorm, and I don't understand why they would take that risk, even if they did want to bring the man back. That's what happened with Slim Jim last time, and they forced him out before it could turn into a 5-alarm fire. Now, JR is not wrong when he talks about, with all the talk lately of Vince, there may be some smoke to the fire. I agree. It feels like there's something going on here. But he's talking about this like it's something that should happen. He's endorsing it. Nothing has changed. He still has scores of horrendous, disturbing allegations hanging over his head with a pending civil case that's either going to arbitration and getting settled, or it's going to go to trial, quote unquote, and it's going to likely get settled anyway before it ever goes to court. But the man is forever tainted. He is damaged goods. And even if you can put all of that aside, he's 80 years old. He has lost his fastball. He lost his fastball a long time ago. People can bitch all they want to about Paul Levesque and the WWE product today. Yeah, a lot of it sucks. But the idea that because they think Triple H sucks, we need Vince McMahon back. This is the only way. He's a big picture guy. We need Vince McMahon back. I will never understand this. This is not the Vince McMahon of 1997. This is not the Vince McMahon of 2007. For all of his business acumen and all of his business instincts, his creative brain is fried. And they have proven that even without Vince McMahon, business can thrive. Business can go on. The company didn't fall apart. They have allowed their greed to consume them, and they've priced out a lot of fans. Would Vince have done that? Probably, yeah, at some point. All of the things that Vince never did before, pricing people out, slapping sponsor logos all over the ring mats. I think that some people believe that had he never left or if he came back, things would suddenly go back to the way they were. They wouldn't. He sold the company. He doesn't own it anymore. It's not his. It doesn't belong to him. He rushed into a sale because he didn't want his family to have it. He got burned by them. This was his revenge. I'll show them. I'll sell it to the highest bidder. And then they'll keep me on and I'll still be around. He screwed himself on that one. He screwed himself and God knows how many women. After a while, you lose track of all the NDAs. I mean, that $7 million payout to that former women's wrestler that was never identified. That must have been a doozy. That's a lot of money. Vince McMahon is a scumbag. A very successful scumbag. And the greatest heel of all time, in my opinion. A tremendous performer on screen. Brilliant mind at times, behind the scenes. I don't deny that, but he is toxic sludge. And that's not anyone's fault but his own, because he's a fucking weirdo. And I'm tired of everybody coming at me with, well, we wouldn't be fans right now if it wasn't for Vince. He made wrestling what it is today. And what's your point? Like, did we enter into some sort of social contract that I'm not aware of, that we are forever in this man's debt? Like, as a fan, I could say thank you. Thank you for the memories. Thank you for the moments. Thank you for the network. I miss it every day. Thank you. Now go away. We don't owe him anything. Believe me, I've poured more than enough money of my own into that company over the years as a fan. I paid my debt. I'm debt-free. The man isn't owed a job for life any more so than any longtime talent or employee who worked for him who was let go or furloughed over the years and got kicked to the curb after 25, 30, 35 years of service. People say, well, that's business. You're not owed a job for life. You're right. You're not. And neither is he. As they say, hey, it's just business. And it would be bad business to bring back Vince McMahon.